how are you? Are you okay? It's okay? Not sure. Here, thumbs up if you're good, sideways if you're okay, and thumbs down if life is not so good right now. Okay, look at mostly good. Glad to hear that. Cool. Well, thanks for coming to our Wednesday seminar. Today we are going to be doing some really interesting stuff to help you prepare for what's coming up in the future, as you can tell. But before we jump into that, a couple of announcements. So there is the sign-in sheet, which hopefully you've had a chance to sign in. If not, then we can pass it around later. If you are joining us for the Group Ethics Retreat, then we look forward to seeing you bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock on the north side of ENR2, and we're going to drive up and have fun at Biosphere 2. Timesheets are due this week, so make sure you do fill in your timesheets. If you managed to do your timesheet 2 weeks ago and you didn't get paid last week, then most likely what happened is your timesheet got approved late or you submitted your hours late. If that happens, if that happened to you 2 weeks ago, or if it ever happens to you the rest of the summer, what will happen is when the time is approved, your pay will get added to the next pay period. So if you reported time, it got missed, it didn't get approved, and you did not get paid last week, then you should have an extra big paycheck next week. Okay, just to let you know. And then afterwards, after seminar tonight, we are going to have a planning meeting for your group ambassadors, and Kat will call later to talk more about that. But we are going to start doing things like field trips, social events, community service. And so if you have an interest in kind of what things we do, then you should come to the planning meeting and give us your input. Okay. All right, so today, as I mentioned, for our seminar, usually every summer for UBER, I like to invite the graduate college and folks from the honors college to talk about things like graduate fellowships and nationally competitive scholarships, which always sound really frightening to people. Every year in UBER, we have students that apply and we have students that get these amazing scholarships, but not everyone knows about them. And so for this summer, I want you to keep in mind, since you have some time before the fall starts, to think about what scholarships you might apply to, what kind of things you should look into, because a lot of these things take quite a bit of preparation. But we, like I said, have had a lot of UBER students who have gotten these scholarships, and they're really amazing, great scholarships, and great opportunities and great fellowships. So today we have with us Nancy Ellis and Sedona Heidinger from the Graduate College to talk more about what the Graduate College offers. A lot of you don't know that there are actually resources to help you do things like write some of these graduate fellowships and scholarships. There's actually people who want to help you do this, so you're not doing it by yourself. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to them so they can tell you more about what they do at the Graduate College. So, thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay, give it a shot. Hello. Can you hear okay? Oh, there's a native answer right here.
Sorry, I'm Nancy, and this is Sedona. I work for the Graduate College in both the Office of Fellowships and also in the Graduate College itself, working with internal grants, like the Graduate Professional Student Council grants. So I go through a whole gamut of different kinds of grants. And fellowships and helping you all. How many of you have applied for a grant or fellowship so far? Just a few, okay. So hopefully you will be totally enlightened and ready to go when we're done here. So I've been here probably about 6 months. I came from a local jurisdiction writing grants and reviewing grants for 20-some years. So, but I graduated from here, so I'm a little familiar with this, so I'll let Sedona introduce herself, and we'll also talk about Shelley.
Thank you, Nancy. Hi everyone, I'm Sedona. I'm a PhD student here in art history, and I'm the graduate assistant for fellowship support for the Grad Center Office of Fellowships. And so the Graduate Center, if you aren't familiar, it's kind of a unit of the Graduate College that handles professional development for people like applying applying to graduate school, for those of us currently in graduate school, and people doing postdoc programs. And so elements that all kind of extracurricular things like professional development, career support, applying for fellowships, grants, scholarships, and also a graduate writing lab for course writing, for your thesis, dissertation, for proposals, etc. And so all of that is housed in the Grad Center, which is on First and Cherry. So if you see that little pink roof building, that's where we are.
And they pretty much have, almost every day there's some kind of writing group, especially during the semester, so you don't have, there are many options, so, and a lot of, most of them are virtual now, so you don't even have to crawl out of bed if you really don't feel like it. I'm not a morning person, so. As you can see, Sedona and I have our photos up here. Shelley Hawthorne-Smith is the Assistant Director of the Graduate Office of Fellowships, and so she pretty much knows everything about every single fellowship that's ever existed or will exist. She's been doing this for a long time, and she also runs writing groups and assists graduate consultants with talking to students about their work. So.
And so today, what we'll be talking about are the various avenues on how to fund your graduate education. I know that some of you might be closer to that threshold than others, but this way you'll at least have heard it once, and then when you yourself get to this point, hopefully it'll kind of come back to you, and you'll know where to go for resources. And so we'll be doing a kind of broad strokes overview of the various kinds of funding, both internal and external, and what those look like, and how you can access those and get help in funding your education. And then we'll leave you with a few actionable tips that you can take regardless of what stage you're in for being successfully funded.
The main, what you all want to know is how to pay for graduate school if you're interested in going to graduate school. I know some of you are, some of you aren't, or you might take a break. But in case you haven't noticed, grad school is very expensive, and the more you can help pay for that from outside sources, the better shape you're going to be in, less stressful that way. A number of students actually, they might get one big fellowship or scholarship, and some actually number them together to cover all their costs. So most students, you use a combination of these, like we said, loans, federal or private, whether they're through yourself, or if you're young enough, sometimes your parents can help, or your guardians. Savings is always important. Work, some people work part-time, full-time. Employee benefits, if you're an employee of the university, there are benefits to to working full-time. I believe it's like $25 a credit hour you pay if you're a full-time employee, and that also helps. Tuition waivers, a lot of times if you're a teaching assistant or a research assistant, there are tuition waivers. Fellowships from the university, like I mentioned really quickly, the Graduate Student Council sometimes has money. There's a lot of internal funding through different departments, and fellowships from outside the university, and we will talk about those briefly.
Yeah, so kind of your first stop would be to fill out your FAFSA annually, and making sure that's kept up to date. And then the Office of Scholarships and Financial Aid is a really big help on not only helping you sort of navigate and make sure your FAFSA is keeping you eligible for as many things as possible, but also that's how you access Scholarship Universe, which you may be familiar with for your funding undergraduate education as well. There's a lot of resources through Scholarships Financial Aid, and they do office hours. They have like Zoom meetings. They have people who are really responsive and helpful in kind of helping you get matched with both internal and external scholarships, and then the FAFSA for that federal aid. So that's a crucial part of the kind of funding your education.
Okay, go. It's internal university funding. Can you take this?
I can, whatever. Got it. Okay. We highly recommend talking with the department that you're interested in applying to, whether that's here or another institution. And doing your research on that department entails looking at the professors, what kind of work they do. Do they have labs? Do they have kind of research teams of graduate students? And also looking into how they fund the students that they have and that they admit. And so some of these departments have federal grants that fund projects in their lab that they then pay their graduate students with. Some of them are funded internally, and students do like teaching assistantships. And so that's something that I encourage you to reach out to like the program coordinator or the director of graduate studies for the department you're interested in, and really asking for those details politely and with very gracious ask, because that can really make a difference in like giving you a picture of what your experience would be like as a student in that department, what you would have to kind of look for elsewhere, how much they provide for you, whether you have to kind of piece together multiple sources, as Nancy mentioned, or whether they could do it as a one-stop shop. And so program coordinators can also connect you with graduate students who are currently in that department. I'm one of those from my department. Prospective students can reach out and ask, so what's it like? How did you get to where you are? Like, what do you recommend? And so those departmental coordinators are going to be really helpful for you in sort of that second layer of information beyond what's in the brochure department website. And so another thing that we recommend you doing is reaching out to professors of interest directly, as nerve-wracking as that can be, but providing them a brief and concise kind of explanation of who you are, why you want to work with them, what you think you could contribute to that department, sort of what makes it like piquing their interest in having you work with them. And so that's, working with department coordinators and reaching out to professors themselves. Do you have anything else on that?
Just as a department coordinators, I came out of public admin here, and our department coordinator always had her hand on the pulse of which professor needed what kind of work, whether it was an RA or working at the university UDOL center, and sometimes it changed depending. All of a sudden, professor got a big grant from the federal government, and all of a sudden, there's opportunities available. So, like Sedona said, you try to learn your professors, but also really keep in contact with the program coordinator, because a lot of times they know a lot of opportunities that might not exist at all. And as we talked about, there are usually 3 kinds of programs here that help internally, and teaching assistant. I don't know if any of you are teaching assistants, grading papers, that was pretty much, and having office hours. I don't know if anyone's done that. I've certainly done that. Teaching sections. When a professor's not there, or there's an extra lab section. A lot of times, graduate students teach lab sections. Research. I've been involved in research with my advisor on different projects he was working on, and that's a great foundation. And maybe it's something you don't want to do when you get out of graduate school, but you kind of learn, and you also learn how to do it. So that's always very important that you keep that research going. And a little outreach is not so much available a lot, but it is available. There are a lot of programs that do, for example, going out to talk to and work with school kids in the public, teaching them about agricultural practices, for example. So there are a few avenues for graduate assistantships, and I would say almost without exception, with every department, there's some kind of assistantship. So it doesn't hurt to ask around.
Yeah, absolutely. And some, depending on the availability within your department, there might be like administrative GA-ships outside your department. Like that's how I got this position. And I'm a TA as well within my department. And so what GA-ships often, like how they fund you is there'll be a package of tuition remission, whether it's a large portion of it or the whole thing, making it in-state tuition rate as well, which is helpful. And then GA-ships often come with health insurance and a stipend to help you it's so that you ideally don't have to take any other outside work. You get to kind of learn and work within your department. So that's the goal of a lot of GA ships, which are really helpful. And so then, in terms of what kind of funding you can get from the university, I know a lot of what we do in the Office of Fellowships is for people kind of working on their dissertation or doing, like, they're further along in their graduate career already. But there's a lot of opportunities available for people just starting graduate school. You don't have to be already halfway through your dissertation in order to get a fellowship or a grant. There are things earmarked specifically for you. And so some examples of these are Graduate Access Fellowship, which can be between $2,000 to $4,000 per semester, Initiative for Maximizing Student Diversity, the Sloan Indigenous Graduate Partnership, and the University Fellows Program. And so all of these are really good opportunities to get funding from the start of your graduate education.
There are also a few internal opportunities that can send you to a conference. You know, just you have a professional conference that maybe, you know, costs $1,000 and you can't swing it. Just, you know, go ahead and apply for that. It can only, you know, it can only help you in the long run. So be aware it may not just be, you know, a $10,000 scholarship from the university. It can be small things that are just as valuable in the long run. Okay, how to find internal funding. Talk with people. We've already said, Sedona said, talk with your advisors, talk with your program coordinators, talk with everybody and their brother. You're gonna know by the end of your academic career, probably everybody in your class, and everybody's gonna have a different focus, but they might know something about opportunity for funding that you don't know. That they might say, oh, hey Gary, you know, you're doing this kind of work, why don't you look into this? Rely on each other. You know, really rely on your friends, advisors, talk with your faculty, talk with your department people. Use the graduate college website. There are a number of resources. There are funding resources, there's scholarship universe. If you just go to the Office of Fellowship part of the website, there's so many resources. And don't hesitate to call us or email us either. We are willing to help you walk through this and say, hey, you know, maybe you should try this. You know, we've all been there before. You know, we can try to help you a little bit. We're not going to say, hey, you're eligible for this funding, but we can kind of guide you toward the right direction and say, maybe you should try this instead, or so-and-so from your department, without giving names, has been successful a few years ago in getting this kind of scholarship. So please just use all the tools that you can. It seems daunting now, but it won't be, really. Once you get started, you're like, oh, look at all this free money.
Yeah, and so then that's the internal piece, and then we'll talk a bit about external funding. And I mean, they're split into two categories. There's some kind of in-betweens. There can be examples of a government funding department that administers and kind of looks internally, so that they're not always that easily separable, but that's just the easy kind of buckets we talk about them in.
So we've got early graduate awards at the National Science Foundation GRFP, and I've heard that several of you are interested in doing that. I would suggest that if you're doing that, look into that now, because it seems like every year they tweak the eligibility a little bit, and so keep your eye on that. We have National Institutes of Health, all kinds of different national programs. Valeria, who's not here, runs the National Office of Nationally Competitive Scholarships. So she also deals with a lot of Fulbright scholarships. There are scholarships for people who want to study abroad, travel awards, a lot of thesis and dissertation research awards. So when you get to that point, you know, don't think that you're done. People will pay you a lot of times if you get awarded. They will pay you to write your dissertation, whether it's here in the US or we have some abroad who want to study in. We've got some people in Morocco, we've got a few in Turkey. So don't think because your research is in a different place that you're not eligible for a number of these awards. So.
Yeah, and so where these all those different types of funding can come from, there's a really wide range. There are government agencies, so like we mentioned, NSF, NIH. side, there's National Endowment for the Arts, of Humanities, and then there's also kind of state and local funding agencies as well, depending on like the kind of research you're doing. There are also those international kind of either like governmental organizations that really like foster international scholarship or foundations, and then there's the kind of charitable philanthropic foundations that will fund research, often specifically for a like, particular subset of research that you might fit into perfectly, or there might be really cool interdisciplinary collaborative opportunities. There are professional organizations, either kind of by your discipline or by identity, and so there's like there's AUW, American Association of University Women, funds a lot of graduate research. There can be opportunities with other universities. Maybe you would collaborate with maybe with other students who are doing similar work as you, or to kind of pursue a specific area of research that another university does really well that you can then bring back here at U of A or wherever you go to grad school. And then depending on the kind of field you're planning on entering, there are companies that will kind of like foster the kind of talent of the next generation that they want to then hire. And so I think here Raytheon is a big one. So NASA is a big one. Yeah, so those are just some of the kind of range of sources you can get funding from.
Yes, and I would encourage you to, if you're interested in any of those, a lot of their websites will have search engines where they will tell you what kind of awards they've given in the past and what their topics are. So you get a kind of idea, you know, maybe this is a good fit, maybe this isn't a good fit, you know, somebody did this last year, so just, you know, just investigate like you would with any other thing you're looking at. We've talked about the National GRFP, Hertz Foundation. For those of you who are looking for Ford Foundation, this was up there last year, and they are shutting down the Ford Foundation program, so we've taken that off. So I know that was a big push last year. So Jack Kent Cook Foundation, anything you can find. A lot of STEM applications, like Sedona said. Just look, and we'll talk about Pivot in a few minutes. So.
And so, just similar to how to find and identify internal sources of funding, external, you're just casting a wider net, searching online, but really also talking to people in your department, to your advisors, program coordinators, and even kind of peers in classes that maybe in other departments. I think what's so crucial is like being able to sort of see yourself as someone who could win this prestigious fellowship can be hard if you don't know anybody who's done it, if you've never heard anyone talk about how they did their personal statement, how they got their letters of rank. And so talking to people who have been successful can really show you a path on how you can sort of be your own version of that. And it's like in our office we have examples of successful applications. Students have generously shared with us. People who have won a bunch of these fellowships have said, yes, you can share my application with people who are in a similar field. And so then you can sort of see a successful example, and that can be really helpful. And so that's like why I'm maintaining those connections, relationships, and checking in with people on like who have maybe a bit ahead of you, or who are there to help you in this process. Really use those connections.
Okay, so I talked about the Graduate Center has a collection of resources online. GRAPES is for grad students and postdocs. That is run through UCLA, but you can just register for a UCLA account and go in there and look at their database. I think it's 625 opportunities as of today. Pivot, I don't know if you all have heard about Pivot. Pivot is this huge grant and funding source that you actually have access to through the U of A. You can put in multiple search terms, you know, if you're, and I'm just making this up, Canadian, and your mother's last name was Smith, and you want to go study biology in, I don't know, Guatemala, you can probably put in all those search engines and something might pop. So And you can also save your searches, which is also very handy. Something will pop up, say, oh, a new pivot search has come up meeting your parameters. So you don't have to go spend 10 hours looking in pivot every other week if you're looking for opportunities. Grant Forward, we use that also. A few professional associations, your professional association for example, I belong to a professional association for grant writers, and we always have different kinds of grant opportunities popping up all over the place, so we are on a listserv for that. So check that. Join the listservs and join the mailing list in your field, and for your any publications you belong to is very handy. And of course, Google, you know, everything you can get off of Google, almost.
And so now for those tips of success that we promised. So in order, so how do you become competitive? How do you, once you know what you want to work on, and you know who you want to fund it, and you believe they're a good fit, how do you kind of get to the point where they agree with you and they're like, yes, we want to fund you? It really takes, at first, some introspection, reflection on what your long-term goals are, where you see yourself at the end of your undergraduate, graduate, professional education, in industry. Think about where you see yourself and what kinds of like stepping stones will get you there, and pursue what really interests you, because that's how you're going to make an application that really captures the reviewer's interest, because you'll be able to kind of present it in a way that no one else could. And take advantage, build your CV. Opportunities like this really puts you ahead. There are other kind of extracurricular, on-campus, internship, work study kinds of things that all sort of build your experience and make you a really kind of a robust candidate. Get to know your professors and employers. Really can't say that enough. And I mean, keep your grades up as well while you're doing all this. I know that's a lot to pile onto your plate, but it all factors into how competitive your application will be. And encourage, like, when you study another language or you study abroad, those kind of broaden not only the opportunities that you're eligible for, but the places that you can study what you're interested in. It can widen your networks internationally, which is really really enriching. And then looking for leadership roles in either in your workplace, in the extracurriculars you pursue, in student government. Those leadership roles are not only great learning experiences, but they also make your application stronger as well.
And to the letters of recommendation, so we in the graduate office of fellowship do push this a lot, and you're probably going to hear this a billion times. The letters of recommendation are very important, just for the future, for you, whether or not you decide to go to graduate school here, there, or you're just going to take time off. It's important to have these letters of recommendation, and we understand that some people, like myself, are very introverted, and asking a total stranger sometimes for a letter of recommendation is very difficult. But at this point in your career, in your academic career, you have time to think about that. You have time to develop these relationships, like Sedona said, and think about who's going to give you a strong letter of recommendation. Professors are used to giving, 10, 15 letters of recommendation a year. They need to know who you are, what your goals are, what you can contribute to your field in the future. So just keep that in the back of your mind, even if you don't, want to work on a fellowship application for the summer. Just start thinking about who you would ask for a recommendation. You can always have those in your back pocket, for a year from now, and they can update it. Just keep that in mind, and it's great to have at least 3. We always try to push 4 or 5 just in case somebody flakes out or at the last minute, which professors are known to do because they get busy. And people like me who are procrastinators, we can go, oh no, they're due tomorrow. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and that's all for the recommendation.
And I would also, you all might know this already, but I would also it really behooves you to give your professor or your recommender as much information as possible to like help them help you. Information on what you're applying for and like what you did in their class, what like they've supervised for you, how you're building on what you learned from them, and why that makes you a good fit for the opportunity. It really, because sometimes a professor can know you really well, but not really remember the specifics about what you worked on together, and they're too busy to ask, so they can write a letter that, while they really believe in you, just can sound kind of just generic and not as persuasive as you really deserve it to be. And so you kind of giving them as much information as possible for the letter really will help your application. And so the 3 things that you can do right now to get started on funding your graduate education is making a funding friend, whether that's someone who is in kind of the same boat as you are and you're looking at some more opportunities. You can kind of share resources with each other, or someone like maybe a graduate student in your same department who has gotten some funding. Just kind of building a group of people who, like people have writing groups for their theses or dissertations, having a kind of funding group, because those connections are really not only helpful for the application process itself, but just the kind of interpersonal support that you need during these really stressful strenuous processes. I have a funding spreadsheet with all the opportunities that you're interested in, and update them with deadlines, eligibility requirements, how many letters of rec, and that can kind of help you if you need to, like, okay, this will fund the first 2 years, and then I have to do this. You have kind of a working like timeline and a kind of accountability sheet for yourself, because no one can remember all of those granular details just in your head. And then keeping your CV updated. When the only way I remember to do it is the second that I get something or my job changes, I just have to update my CV that day, because otherwise it'll just fly out of my head and years will go by. So really keeping that updated, and that makes sure that you have like your full list of accolades, of awards, of research travel and conferences and things. So those are 3 things that you can do no matter what stage you're at in your education and how far away you are from possibly finding graduate school.
That was it, and we're happy to take any questions. I know it was a lot of information, but
Late in the afternoon.
Late in the afternoon. But at least it's not a Friday afternoon. Does anybody have any questions or? Yes.
When asking for letters of rec, is it okay to ask teachers within different departments or just the department that you want to get into?
So I would say it helps whatever teachers or professors know you and your work best, and like can sort of see the vision for why you want to be where you want to be. I think having a kind of diversity of recommenders is helpful for you. Do you have any other?
No, I think that's a good point, and we've also had people who have asked their high school, like their senior advisor, because they knew exactly which direction that they were going in, and that's going to be a strong letter, but a more strong letter than Sarah was in my class and got an A kind of letter. So whoever knows you best and whoever can speak to what you want to do in your academic career would be the best thing.
And the letter from someone who may not be as well known in your field, but is a really glowing recommendation and like picture of you is way better than if you took one of Noam Chomsky's intro courses and tried to get a letter from him because he's Noam Chomsky. Like that, a big name with a really cursory, if you even would do that for a student at this point. But people sometimes feel like, oh, it needs to be a really like prestigious recommender, and that's not really the case. The prestige of the person doesn't matter. It's how well they know you and can speak to your work.
Thank you.
Anybody else at the moment? I know this has been taped, so you'll have the opportunity to go back and, yes?
Are we allowed to send out your slides? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So I'll do
yes.
that as well.
Send out the slides, and please, avail us. I think our emails are on there, and or Shelley, and if I think they're on there, and if not, yeah.
But you can share it.
You can share, yes. So if you have any last minute questions, you think of in the middle of the night, and say, oh, I forgot to ask this, please let us know. We'd rather, answer any questions you have now, sooner than later. So we appreciate you coming to listen to us talk. So, yeah.
I do have a question. So there are like graduate degrees that are like through the graduate college, a lot of like interdisciplinary programs and stuff like that. And I know that oftentimes like GA positions and TA positions are, it's prioritized to give them to students who are who are from that department. Do you have any tips for getting funding for people who are in like an interdisciplinary program or like a program that is in a department that has limited funding?
Yeah, so I can speak because I've known people in those GIDPs and being in a department with very limited funding, looking at kind of administrative units throughout the university. There are, because that's like the graduate center has multiple GE-ships, and I have colleagues from departments all around campus. And I know, so like the cultural centers will have GAs, that's a good place. And so looking at those kind of administrative or like outreach units is a good place to look, yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
So, I'm gonna do one thing quick. Oh, it's okay. I just wanted to show you something else as well. So, initially, we also had Valeria Quijada, who's from the Honors College, who's going to be coming, but she wasn't able to make it today. But I do want to show you some information on her office. And so literally, if you go to the U of A site and you type in nationally competitive scholarships, you will get this page. You'll notice that this is housed over in the Honors College, but the first thing I want to tell you is if you are not an honor student, whether you are or not, that office and their resources are open to you. So do not be frightened by the fact that the ONCS office is housed in the Honors College, okay? A couple things I wanted to point out on this site too, is if you look at their database. And this is kind of nice because it's divided by your class standing. So if you're a senior, then here's a whole list of things that you should look at. There are a whole bunch of scholarships that are out there for a lot of different things. Studying abroad, doing research abroad even, studying in the UK, or doing grad school in the United Kingdom or in other countries, all kinds of things. And so this is a really good spot because it gives a little description on each one. There's a few that I'll point out just really quick. So the Boren Fellowship is a really interesting one if you want to do study abroad to learn a kind of less common language. The Gilman, I think, is going to be further down, but that's also a study abroad scholarship. The Fulbright Scholarship is a really good one. A lot of students will apply to Fulbright for one of two reasons. One would be to teach English in another country after you graduate. That's really fun. And then there's also the Fulbright Research Study Awards, where you can say, oh, I want to go to, Japan and do research on this particular topic. And you put together a proposal for the research you want to do, and you contact someone in Japan who's doing pretty cool work as far as a researcher goes, and then you can put that in as a proposal, and it can be funded, and they can support you to actually go do that thing and live in that place. It's really, really neat. A lot of these are scholarships that I've seen UBERT students get and do, and just not know about them, so cool things to keep in mind. And if you keep scrolling down, if you're a sophomore or junior, there's more things here. Oh, I'll point out the astronaut scholarship. That's an interesting one. A lot of students are like, I don't want to be an astronaut. I don't need to apply to that. It is not for astronauts, it is from astronauts. So this is a scholarship that a bunch of former astronauts got together and funded to support students who are doing research and students who are in science and engineering. So don't be misled by the title. It might not be what you think it is. So again, if you have time this summer, you should go through and look at this. One of the main reasons I invited both Nancy and Sedona to come and speak today is because last year we had Shelley and Valeria come and talk in July. And almost all of UBERT students were like, why didn't you do this in June? Because I wanted more time this summer to look into things. So I moved it up. So you have the opportunity to look into these. And then there's general scholarship information down here as well. But one thing I wanted to point out for this, I know these are kind of old deadlines, but some of the deadlines for those scholarships are really far in advance, which is why we're doing this over the summer. So some of these things are due like in September for after you graduate or for the next academic year. And the reason for that is because some of these scholarships, the University of Arizona has to nominate students for them. So there's like an internal process where you put in stuff, and then the university has a committee that picks like the 10 students that it's gonna put forth to the Scholarship Foundation, and then they will pick nationally, which is why they're called Nationally Better Scholarships. So I wanna let you know that some of these deadlines are super early, so I do hope you take time over the summer to look into them. Okay, so that's this particular office. I will also take a minute and do a plug for one of our own programs called Bravo. So Bravo is a program that we set up. It's actually fully funded by donors, which is very interesting. And it's a program that is designed to basically fund a research collaboration that you and your mentor set up with an international researcher elsewhere on the planet. And so basically, what you can do if you're interested in doing Bravo is you can talk to your current research mentor now and see what collaborators they have across the nation, across the world. And then let's say your collaborator's working with someone doing cool stuff in Madagascar, just for the heck of it. You can talk to that professor in Madagascar, talk about what kind of research project there is, and then you would write a proposal to Bravo. So Bravo will provide up to $8,000 of funding. So it's kind of like study abroad, but it's not, because it's research abroad. So instead of you picking a country and saying, I'm gonna go there and study there, you're actually picking a project, and then you're following a collaborator to wherever they are to do that research. There's priority given to students who have not traveled abroad before or have limited means to do so. But the great thing about Bravo is basically with $8,000, that's a lot cheaper than study abroad. Like, we would pay the $8,000 for you to travel to that place, stay at that place, potentially have a stipend in that place, cover research supplies at that place, and you can do that over the summer. So you should look into Bravo if you're interested in doing research abroad as well. Okay? All right, so with that, we are right at 4:13. That will give you 2 minutes to kind of take a stretch break before your group leaders check in. I'll stay here a little bit, and so when Nancy is done, if you have questions you want to come ask us, then please do. But otherwise, I would suggest you meet your group leaders wherever you met with them.